Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. Two Friends on the Couch is live again, and again I am alone. But that is totally fine because it is a wonderful Saturday morning, or Saturday the 27th of June 2020, and because we don't have anything else to do, we are going to be doing some coding today. And when I say we, obviously I mean I. So I decided I was going to go ahead and maybe have you guys tag along with me. For the last week, have been working on a program that I've been working on coding with my very basic knowledge of coding with the Visual Basic language. And if you're unfamiliar with coding, today we're going to introduce you to some basic concepts. If you want something a little bit more basic than what we're doing today, I would highly recommend you go check out my Rabbids coding game that I ended up playing a while ago. It's on my channel. I'll try to provide a link to it in the description below. But today we're going to utilize some of those concepts, and I'm going to show you what I've been working on here. So the basic premise for the application, the reason I decided I wanted to proceed with this is because I played Dungeons and Dragons. It's a game that I really, really like, and I play it pretty frequently. I'd say maybe once every couple weeks with some friends. And in Dungeons and Dragons, you write a story, and your job as a dungeon master is to convey the story to the players in a very simple and effective way to make them understand and grasp the concepts about what the story you're telling. Similar to when you read a book, how you have an author that writes out the story in a very detailed manner so you can picture yourself actually being in that place. Well, sometimes I need help with telling this adventure. And sometimes I can't memorize an entire book's worth of material that I need to convey to my players. So, hence, the idea of coding this program was born. And today I'm going to kind of guide you through some stuff that I've already done, and we're just going to continue to work on it. And I'll try to explain to the best of my ability some of the things that we're working with and what some of the code actually does. And if you're watching and you have any questions regarding what some of the code that I'm using actually does and how to potentially incorporate that code into your program, please leave a comment in the description or in the chat, and I will do my best to get back to you on that. And hopefully, this will also inspire you to go out and maybe start learning coding on your own. There's a ton of material out there for basic tutorial videos and books for people who have never coded before and want to get started. And that's kind of where this branches off on. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to some of the modules that I have designed. Again, the goal of this program is to assist me in telling a story. And with any story, you have different chapters. So the first thing I had to do is create a form that shows up like a typical Windows form or a pop-up that you might see on your screen. So I'm going to go and kind of interact with this here. I'm going to compile this program. Basically, I'm taking all the code and I'm actually creating the program with it. Okay. So here is my main story here. This is the program. And the first thing you see is it's a chapter select screen. I have 4 different chapters here that I can pick from. This last one actually is not coded. You see, if I click on this button that says Aftermath, nothing actually happens. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit about the design of this program and how this opens up other things within side of this program. So the first thing we have here, this button that I created, called About This Adventure. Now, if I click on it, it's going to bring up this box. It's got a whole slew of text. I tried to condense it as much as possible. Most of this I've already memorized, so this program, at least for my usage, is totally fine. I'm able to kind of grasp it without it being overwhelming. I have a summary, an adventure synopsis, and the module's name is called the Sunless Citadel. So this kind of gives you a very broad overview of the adventure, the synopsis, the summary. And here we have some buttons that I've incorporated that give me just some additional information that I might not need right away, but might help me a little bit later. So, for example, if I want to find out how we're actually going to map this adventure, we click this and a pop up message comes up. And it tells us that you have to have a volunteer to be the party mapper and basically sketch the areas that you describe to them. Because this dungeon is very large, it's almost impossible to uh, draw it out on a battle mat in real scale. So for my adventure, I gave one of my players graph paper to be able to kind of sketch the room in. Okay. These down here give you just some hooks as far as how the players might want to actually jump into the adventure. Again, this just has some information here. When I click this button, instead of making a pop-up appear, it actually just replaces the text in this box, saving screen space. And I'll kind of show you how we do that with code. The next chapter down here is called Oakhurst. And Oakhurst is a small town just outside of the Citadel where the characters are eventually going to go. This box is a little bit more compact. As you can see, it's got a small description here, and it's got a list of locations in Oakhurst. Right now, this little box here is telling me to select the location, so if I want to find out what the shrine is all about, it replaces the text in this box. And I can do that with all sorts of other items here in the list. I also have rumor buttons that could be heard in Oakhurst, and these give the pop-up boxes with the information and just some additional information. We can press this button to close this and get back to the main chapter select screen. I'm sorry. There we go. All right. The last button in the module we're going to be working with today is called the Citadel. This is the main area that the adventurers are going to find themselves in. So let me just describe to you the premise of how we have this module laid out, and then we'll actually start diving into the code. This right here is the Citadel. If I press this button, it kind of launches this with a small map of the adventure. Again, this part of the application is not quite done. As you can see, I could drag this, and that really doesn't do anything that I want it to do. So this I'll save for a later date. We're not going to work on that today. But just wanted to give you an idea of what some of the rooms look like. This is the large map. Now, each room in this citadel actually has a number associated with it. If I go to this room select drop-down box or combo box, I can actually select the particular room that they're in. So if I say that they are in the Gallery of Forlorn Notes, room number 7, I can click on that. Now what happens is in room 7, I'm just going to switch back here. Uh-oh. I must have not done that right. See, I kind of broke my program here, and that's what's kind of funny about this. You know, if you code one thing incorrectly, then all of a sudden, bad things happen. So let's find out what we did wrong. We clicked the back button, and the error message was telling us something was funky here. So let's take a look here. If the index of whatever the index of this box is, if that's 0, basically, if it is on the first item and I click the back button, what'll happen is it will look at this. And then it says if it's on the first one, then the index, and I can just I'll replace this with then index equals 56. Unnecessary value. Maybe see unnecessary assignment of a value to index. And I don't know why that's unnecessary. So basically what we're doing here is we're trying to find out every time I press that back button on the Citadel page, and I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here. Every time I press this button, it's going to go back one room. If I press that now, you can see nothing happens. I can go forward with that issue, but once I hit 0, nothing happens. So this is index 0, or the first thing. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to determine, hey, if the index is set to 0, then we're going to set the index to 56, which is the last room down here. Otherwise, it's going to move the room back 1. So there's something in this code that's not correct, and we have to figure out what it is. That's all coding is. It's problem solving. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and take a look at this line by line. Okay. We've set a variable to index, and we've said that that equals whatever the index is of the box. So if index is set to 0, then we'll just type it all out again. So room select CBO. That is identifying this box that I've named room select CBO that has the drop down. So if the index, which is whatever the selected index here, is 0, then we're going to go ahead and set the selected index to 56. Otherwise, if that is not the case, then it's going to take the box and make the index go down by 1. So let's try it out and see what breaks, and we'll just kind of work on it as we need to. Let's set it. Let's replicate the results. We went to 7. I go forward. If I go back, now it works. Now if I'm at the ravine, which is index 0, if I go back, now it should take me to 56. Fantastic. And as you can see, I haven't actually programmed these rooms yet. Like room 56 here says, read this box aloud. There's nothing available, nothing available. These buttons don't do anything. Reset's not going to do anything. So that's fine. Looks like whatever the issue was, we ended up fixing it. I don't know if it just didn't compile correctly or whatever. But good news, it seems to at least be working now. And as you can see, these buttons, all they do is they switch between the index on here. So if I press this, the index is now 7, index is 8, so on and so forth. You might also have seen some additional features here. For example, whenever I change rooms, these buttons down here can change text. For right now, as you see in room 6, Old Approach, it says Dragon Door. However, if I move up to room 7, none of these now have any function. If I move up to 8, now I only have one. This is a special type of coding that I have to do for every single room, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be finishing off, at least for the most part, we're going to go ahead and finish uh, the leftover rooms here. So I believe, let me go ahead and close this. But before I do, you also see here that I have a pictures that change with every single room, indicating the room that they're in. For example, room 7 has these 3 alcoves at the top, 1 alcove at the bottom, and this room 8 is just a hallway. So this is an easy way for me to keep track of the room and where the players reside. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of that. All right. So now that we've done that, let's see what we are working with. We're going to go and scroll up. This here is all of the lovely, lovely code that exists inside of the program. Without any of this code, none of the buttons or none of the icons or imagery you see on that form will work. So I'll just kind of give you a brief overview of what happens here and currently what is happening. Okay, just gonna kind of clean up my mess a little bit here. I've used these green text to allow you to kind of identify comments. And so the green text are comments that allow us to get a overview of what a particular feature does. And it's always good practice when you're coding to incorporate these lines of comments. So if another programmer is working on your program, they can easily identify what you were doing and be able to just piggyback on that without too much of a hassle. So again, I'm not going to go through everything because we're wasting precious time here, but I just wanted to give you an idea about how code is usually set up, and it all looks very scary, so I'm going to take it a little bit at a time, okay? All this is the first line here tells us what event is happening. So for example, this is a private sub or a subroutine that identifies the combo box that we specified earlier, this one here. And it says whenever the selected index changed, or in layman's terms, whenever when a different item is selected, it will perform whatever happens between the private sub and the end sub here. So the first comment here tells us that, well, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to reset the text boxes and buttons to their default values. This happens every single time that the index is changed. It sets the image to a cross, which you've seen at the very start. It sets it to this little cross image. And I'll kind of keep it here so we can keep an eye on it. All right, so it takes the picture box, which is here, and sets it to the cross picture. The read this text is set to not applicable. The read this text box is this little gray box here. The description text box, which is this little white box down here, and puts a default value of not applicable and no description available. If applicable, click the appropriate button below to display information about this room. And it also sets the text values of the buttons, the 6 little buttons that I have down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It sets them all to non-applicable, NA. So that's the first thing that happens whenever we change a value here in this text box. The second thing that happens is it populates the selected values into the correct modules when the correct room is selected from the combo box. For example, we are now in room 0, the ravine. Let's take a look at what actually happens here. We're going to go ahead and expand this. And again, we're just going to take this line by line here. Okay, we're not going to go through the whole thing, but just so you have an idea of what we're working with. So the idea is that after all the values get reset to a default state, we can now customize everything about those buttons, text box, drop down menus, everything we can customize when a particular condition happens. So what we do is we say we're going to use this function right here, this what if statement called select case. And what this is saying is when a particular condition happens, do this. So the first thing it analyzes is what is the index or what room are you currently in? Well, by default, when this form loads, we've set it to be at the first room, which is 0. And everything in coding is 0 based, so which means the first item in a list is always 0. You always have to memorize that, and that's something that you'll learn as you start. Let's see if we can locate the load sub to make this a little bit easier to understand. We're going to minimize this here. Should be towards the top. All right, here it is. So this is a private subroutine that's called Sunless Citadel main form load. So when the Sunless Citadel main form first appears, anything below this happens. So we've set it to load the first value into the combo box at runtime. And as you can see here, what it does is it populates room 0 as the first room we see. So we can click on the compile button, that little play button up there, to actually take the code and form it into the running program. We'll come to the Citadel, and as you can see, it's preloaded room 0. If I change that, it's going to break everything in the program, so I'm not going to explain consequences and things like that. But something to be made aware of is every single change you do affects everything in the program. So you need to be careful when you're making changes. If you decide you want to actually start coding yourself, consider getting a beginner's book. You can get them online or at your local bookstore. That's how I started learning myself. And I'm no expert by any means, but I do have a basic knowledge about this language individually, specifically, which is called Visual Basic. All right. So now that we know that whenever the form loads, it loads up that first room, like we just talked about. Now, I'll show you how we actually populate those values. Okay. So remember before where we're saying that when the room is changed, when the room number is changed, we customize it. We customize everything. We customize the text on the buttons. We customize what text is in that text box. We customize what picture shows up in that picture box. Okay, and because when we first load the program and we load into that Citadel box, that Citadel form, it changes it to 0. The first thing that you're going to see is in the gray box, it's going to have this specific text, as you can see in orange. It's always in quotes whenever you're talking about text. So this text will appear in the gray read this text box. It will appear up here. If we decide we want to customize the description text box, the white portion text box underneath the gray one, we will customize this text. And we can also customize the buttons and what they say. So I actually have 2 lines of code on this line here. The first one says the first button's text value will say investigating. The second the second button's value will say descending. And then the picture will have the my cross. Now, I can actually remove this code, and I'll tell you why. Because every single time that we reset it, it automatically gets set up here as the cross. Let's see if we can find that. Yep, there we go. So when the index is changed, it sets it to the cross. So all we're doing is setting that twice. Unless we customize it to do something else, every time we switch to a new room, it's always going to be the cross. And we'll just kind of identify that here. Let me run the program. I'll go back to the Citadel. And as you can see, it still remains the cross here. A little pixelated. I might change the image later. But it's a good start. All right. And remember, I told you that the first button is going to say investigating, which it does. And the second button's text value will say descending. Okay. Awesome. All right. So what we're going to do is I've already programmed rooms 0 through 21. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead in the module here for the Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm going to locate room 22. And we're just going to go ahead and start programming that. Give me a second here. All right. So let's take a look here. First thing we're going to want to program in room 22, and just to make sure that, again, that there's nothing in room 22, we'll manually select it from the drop down here. And as you can see, it just loads the default values. So nothing in here that I can do. If I click these buttons, nothing happens. Nothing happens here. So we want to change that. So we're going to have room 22. In this particular module, the Sunless Citadel, room 22 is called Larder. And the first thing that happens when you enter the room, according to the D&D module, is you have to tell the adventurers something. So we're going to change what's in the read this text box. That gray text box. That is what this is identifying. Read this text identifies this. Now we want to change a particular value. And what do we want to change about it? We want to change what it says. It's text. And we're going to set it equal to this text here. I'm just copying and pasting it from the module. Okay. And then it also has some descriptions. So we're going to identify the white text box. And it doesn't have any images. This one's actually pretty simple. But it should have an image. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to add the image to the picture box. The picture box is called picture box main. And we're going to set the image to a image that I've already designated in a location called My Resources. And this is going to be picture 22. Okay, so let's go ahead and just click the Save All button and start. Go back to the Citadel. Again, we're going to locate room 22. And bam, here's the picture. There's no buttons. Again, we didn't specify what these buttons should say. But the read this text has the text that we said that we want to put in there. And the room description now has that. And as you can see, everything is still functioning properly. So this is room 22. All right. So far, so good. Let's head off to room 23. This room's called Underdark Access. What we're going to do is we're going to tell the program now that, hey, just so you know, in the event or in the case that the item in the text box in the drop-down menu is room 23, what you're gonna do is you're going to tell the read this text box to input this text value inside. And you're also going to change what's in the description text. I'm just going to kind of copy and paste it here. I'm just going to do some formatting. As you can see that there's a little space here. In order to actually do a return or press enter, you have to do a special type of thing called a carriage return. So we're going to do a carriage return line feed command. And all that does is it just adds, it's like we're pressing the enter button when we're typing text. And that should fix that issue there. Oh, and this one, we actually, for room 23, we have one button that we have to program. So what we're going to do is we're going to specify button number 1. And we want to modify its text value. And again, anytime we're putting in text, we're going to put a quotation mark. So this button we call creatures. So let's see what happens when we run this. Before I run it, I'm also going to add the picture in here. So picture box, main, image. We have to put image number 23 from my resources. All right, now let's see what happens. Room 23. All right, so it's got the text. It's got the room in the description, and look, now it's got a space here. If I removed this little special character here, we're just going to go ahead and remove this. Look what happens now. And it just kind of all runs together. It's a little bit sloppy to read. So it's always good to use kind of punctuation when you're coding. And we'll kind of go back in here just to show you. We just put that back. Room 23. So now, as you can see, it's nicely spaced. And now we can read this. Same text, and just spaced a little bit differently. All right. Actually, I have to edit the category because we are not gaming. We are coding. Thank you very much. Give me a second. All right. So, as you can see, I also have the creatures button down here. But I haven't assigned any value to it. If I click it, nothing is going to happen. As you can see, I'm clicking, clicking, clicking. I can click all day long. Nothing is ever going to happen to that. So let's go ahead and exit the program, and we're going to assign some functionality to the creatures button. And how do we do that? We have to locate the subroutine for button 1. And all this says is whenever you click button 1, do whatever's underneath it. And this does the same thing. It populates the selected values into the correct modules when the button's clicked. So we have another select case statement here. And this says, whenever the room number, whatever the room number is, program the button to do a specific thing. So again, if the room number is 0, what it's going to do is whenever you press button 1, it puts this text here in the description text. Well, we're going to do the same thing. However, we have to say if the room is number 22, we have to do something else. We're going to set the description to put a specific value in here. So let's do this. Description, if I can spell, that'd be great. Text equals And again, I'm just copying and pasting it from the D&D module. For copyright reasons, I cannot show you that. And that is a misspelling. All right. So now, let's see if we have button functionality with number 22 over there. Oh, no, it was room 23. I apologize. All right. So we have creatures. Let's see what happens now. If this is correct, whatever's in here in this description box should get replaced by the text we just selected. And apparently we did that wrong. So let's take a look and find out what happened. If it's room 20, oh, I see what I did wrong. See, it's very easy to mess up. I put 22 in here instead of 23. But because we weren't on room 22, it didn't do anything. So let's go back to room 23. And now, as you can see, I press the creatures button and the text got replaced. If I press this button reset, I've coded it to put the all this text back. That happens when you load up the room. All right. We're doing good so far. How you guys holding up? Hopefully good. We're streaming for about half an hour now. We still got a long way to go. So we're just going to keep doing this. We've got a lot of rooms. We got at least 56 rooms we've got to do this to. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly here. Feel free to drop a comment if you have any questions. Just want to say hi. More than welcome to do that. All right. So the first thing we got to do is we got to set up the description here. And oh no, I sense a problem. I am in the wrong subroutine. I was on button 1. What I need to do is we need to change it so that when the text box value gets changed, when the combo box is room 24, the description text box will say, oops, it won't say that. Oops. I'm gonna put this in quotation marks, otherwise it's not gonna like it. Alright, next. There is some text that it's making me read, so we're gonna do read this text value, and we're going to put a very short sentence. Alright, next thing we have some buttons we need to program. So button 1.text equals. This button is going to be called Hidden Pits. We only have one button, so we're okay. Next thing, we're going to go ahead and put in the picture. Picture box main. That image is set to my dot resources dot room 24. Alright, and then we go down to button 1. We only have one button that we programmed. Again, this is room 24. So in the event that it's room 24, whenever you press that button, we're going to set the description text box to have a different text value. And this is kind of a long one. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do that spacing we talked about earlier, where we're doing the carriage return line feed. And VB carriage return line feed. Oops. And then we'll add the rest of the text here. Let's find out why it's not liking that. Maybe I'll just put a little backspace here. And VB carriage return line feed. Oh, you know what? I didn't put an equal sign here. See, I told you. You do one thing and it doesn't like it. And now you see we added the equal sign and the red line goes away. All right. let's take a look here. All right, we got one more line, and we have one more line we need to work with. All right, this is the last line. All right. So all I'm doing here is I have 3 separate paragraphs for this button when pressed. So let's double check just to make sure it still worked. 24, trapped access. I have room 24 right here. It has the proper read this aloud. I need to take off this capitalization that's annoying me right now. Let's I don't know why it's like that. Let's go back here. All right, capitalization issue should not be fixed. All right, it is now fixed. And click hidden pit. As you can see, it's got 3 little separate paragraphs here with that proper spacing using the VB carriage return. It adds that space in here. So no other buttons. These aren't doing anything. Next room. We're doing good here. And all this is when you tell the program that you have uh, no more rooms for it to look back at to compare itself with. So what it'll do is, in the event that none of the conditions above apply, it'll run whatever's in this code here. Now I have this listed as a comment, this code line, because before I had this message box appear that every time it comes across a room that's not programmed, it'll throw up a pop-up message letting you know. So let's say I go to room 24, and then we go forward 1 room. As you can see, it's now got that pop-up message that just came through. It says no valid option has been selected. So yeah, that's lovely. But it gets annoying because you go through each room and let's say, this is annoying. So because I know which rooms are programmed and which are not, I'm just going to put a little comma here, and that is how we specify comments in Visual Studio with the Visual Basic programming language. All right. Got room 24. We're on to room 25. We're moving along at a brisk pace. All right. I'm just going to add a couple more spaces here. We are on the right subroutine. All right, so room 25. This also has some description that it needs to read. So we'll do the description text.text value. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. But that's what happens when you go fast. All right, and then I've got some reading text. Again, the whole point of Dungeons and Dragons is you need to communicate with the players and tell a story. So most of these rooms here have a read this text value. So players need to know what room they're in, how it's like. So, for example, this empty chamber is home to only rat droppings, crumbled flagstone, and stains. Gross, but it paints a vivid picture in your head about what this room would actually be like. Now, this room is the first one that we actually have 2 buttons. So we're going to set the first button value to investigating. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to combine 2 different lines of code on 1 line. You can do this in this way, where I do I put a new line here and button 2.text equals, and then this one's called trap. But it just takes up extra lines in my code, and I like to have them all together. So if I'm programming buttons, they're all in one single line. For example, this line up here, this is line 139 and 138. This has 4 buttons, and they're all combined into one line. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to separate that with a colon. And if I just do that, it's all compact, and it saved myself a line. So that's very good. All right, so let's go ahead and add the button functionality now. Again, we need this to do something. We'll set the description and we'll set that to that. All right, looks good to me. All right, let's open up the sub for button 2. All right, this is room number 25. Alrighty, and that should be it. The only thing I forgot to do on this subroutine up here, again, this is the main one that changes the value in that text box. We're going to go ahead and set the image. So picture box main dot image is set to my resources, image number 25. Did I put image 25? Yep, it should be there. All right, underscore 25. Yeah. Alrighty, so now I have room 25. This is fine, this is fine. This works. Alright, next. Let's see if it works every so often. That's important. Hey bro, how's it going? Just working on my D&D program here. Hopefully I won't get too bored. But we're working on a program to help me run the Sunless Citadel adventure. So again, I'll just kind of go through the basics of the program real quick for you. I don't know how long you've been here. So the main program works like this. You have a chapter select form that's got 4 different chapters about this adventure, Oakhurst, the Citadel, and the Aftermath. I haven't programmed this last button here, so it doesn't do anything. But each of these buttons do something else, and they open up a different form. The form we're working with today is the Citadel. And all this is they have a room selector icon up here. So if I come to this text box with this drop down, I can select a room I want to go into, and it gives me information about the room. It's got a picture of the room, a description of the room, any text I might need to read aloud to the adventurers, and I've got some buttons down here that help me learn a little bit more about the room. So it looks like there's some creatures in this room. If I press that, it tells me what kind of creatures. And this button here gives me a description about the development, about what actually is taking place here. So it's kind of cool, a lot of work. I appreciate the compliment, man. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, but I'm on room 25 right now. I think actually I programmed everything with room 25. Let me double check. Yep. So we're moving on to room 26, I guess. Yeah, looks like it to me. All right. So this top section here is the main subroutine that says when the room is changed, it does something specific. So let's say the room is number 26, which is the room that we're working on right now. What we're going to do is we're going to tell it what to do. There's some stuff in here that I need to read to the adventurers for room 26. So what we'll do is we will put the gray box there in that form, which is called the read this text. And all that is just the text that I need to read to the adventurers whenever they enter a room. So that's the text that they enter there. Next, there doesn't appear to be a description. However, there appears to be a lot of buttons. So 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons on this. All right, man. Well, thanks for joining. I appreciate you joining for as long as you could. I'll hit you up later, though, man. All right. That's right. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons. So let's specify the button's text here. It's called investigating. Hopefully my spelling won't fail me. We will see. Alright, button 3. Oh, I missed one. This one here should actually say fountain. This one here should say western door. And finally, button 4 is a scythe trap. Yep, you too, man. Alright, so room 26. Alright, we've got those buttons, text values programmed. So let's go ahead now and just add the functionality here. Case 26. And the description exe text is set to this text here. And this is a quote inside the text. It doesn't like quotation marks inside of text, so we'll just put single quotes inside of there. And this one here, we're going to do the same punctuation here. We're going to add the spaces. All right. That's button 1. Let's move on to button. Why am I on button 2? Oh, I am on button 2. I apologize. On to button 3. Button number 3. Again, this is where I keep making mistakes. We're not on room 25. We're on room 26. At this rate, this whole program is just going to be all messed up at the end of the day. All right. So, button number 3 is the one that says Western door. So let's add the text to that. No. All right. That's that button, all right. Let's see here. See, it doesn't like it. We've got text and quotation marks inside of text. So we just put that in single quotes and the red line goes. Last button, button number 4. It's a scythe trap. This has 3 paragraphs, so again, we're going to use that same punctuation. We're going to put all this text inside of the description text box. Let me just copy paste these. Alright, and then this text here goes here. Boom. Alrighty. On room 27, but let's just double check room 26 real quick. Want to make sure everything works. That way we can kind of troubleshoot it as we go along. Oh, I didn't put the image in there, you see? And this is actually fine because there's no initial description about the room. It's just if they want to do stuff, so. Alright, so let's go back up here to the main sub here. And we'll add the picture box picture. Okay, so this should now have a picture in box 26. There we go. There it is. All right. All right, let's go to room 27. Yay! All right, this doesn't have a description, so we're gonna start off with the read this text. All right, and now we've got 2 buttons that we have to program. So, button 1, we're gonna make that button creatures. We'll separate the second button with the colon, and again, we'll assign it a text value. And we'll call that one treasure. All right, and before we forget, let's go and add the picture. I have to specify it by its proper name, otherwise it's not going to work. And again, we've stored the image in a resource folder. We'll call it room 27. Alright, so we're going to add the description. And on to button 2. And this is only 1 paragraph. Alrighty, so that should take care of that. Back up to main form here. And let's run 27. We can compile the program and see if 27 now works. Alrighty, the description matches the picture. Alrighty. Oh, missing 3 letters of the first one on button 2. So, ah, see, that's why we double check things. It's the, not E. Alrighty. Alright. We gotta read this text. Alright, we also have a description for room 28. Not a very large description, which is nice, because it's always the formatting that always takes a while. Alright, button 1. Uh, okay, and button 2. We'll add, again, the description. And we'll just copy and paste this large paragraph here. Okay, description text. Alright. And I just want to double check that I have programmed the text values for all 3 buttons. I actually haven't programmed any of them. Isn't that lovely? So, see, that's why I check these things. Sometimes I can go too fast. And sometimes that causes me to miss stuff. Okay. And again, we'll add the picture box main dot image, and we'll set that to my resources image number 2028 underscore 28. Importante. All right. Yeah, 28. And I like the way that I've programmed this specifically because it can be a little bit confusing when you're looking at the entire map here. So all you have to do is glance at it the wrong way for a second, and all of a sudden you're confused. But if you break it down into smaller sections by each room and you snap a picture, now you realize that, okay, instead of it being a gigantic thing, it's only these 6 rooms here it's talking about. With this, again, where it says the section of hallway contains 6 doors, all slightly ajar. The area smells musky. And again, you can just kind of condense that down, and it makes it easier to determine kind of what's going on here. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. All right, let's keep going. Room 29. I think we're gonna do up to room 30, and then we'll call it. Just because, again, coding can be a little overwhelming if you're not used to it. And it's also obviously not the most pleasant thing. I may end up doing some games later today, so feel free to join me for that. I might be live streaming again, so I hope that I will see you guys all there. But in the meantime, let's finish this up. We got 2 more rooms, and then we'll end the stream. Uh, there. All right. Read this text. It's got some additional text in room 29. This room's called the Disabled Traps. It doesn't have a description. It's got 4 buttons. I keep everything uniform as best I can. All right. All right, and I think that's it for that one. All right, let's go and program these buttons to do something. Again, we're telling it if it's button 1 and we're selected on room 29, the description text box, not the label, text box, the text value is going to be this. And this one here has a paragraph punctuation, so we're gonna add that punctuation in there. And all right, so that should come out nicely. Next thing, button 2. Okay. Button 3's got a long paragraph with the punctuation. And again, it's got a punctuation at the end. That doesn't make it easy. All right. All right. Oh, I see the problem. I would just add a. When stuff underneath the code starts going wonky, that's when I start getting very confused. Ugh. All right. I'm done button 3. I'm going to do the last button, button 4, and then we'll move on to our last room for the stream. Case equals, this is room 29. Again, we're going to set the description text box to the text value. We have to use equal sign for that. Alrighty. Alright, so let's test out room 29, and then we'll go to room 30 and take a look at it there. Alright, room 29 is here. Room label is correct. Read this looks correct. There's no description, but 5 text boxes. Buttons 1, 2, 3, 4. Uh-oh. I see where I went wrong. I put the western door in button 5 and then button 4. That's not a problem. We can change that. Let's go back down here. And I know why I did that too. Huh. That's weird. Oh, you know what? It's not the buttons problem. It's here. Haha. See this one here? I accidentally labeled button 5, uh, and I wanted to label button 4 instead. So let's go back here just to double check everything. And our last room we're gonna do is called Mama Rat. All right. All right, guys. Home stretch. Room 30 doesn't have a description. It does have a read this, however. So we're gonna put some text here in that gray text box. It's going to be labeled as such. And we've got some buttons here. We've got 1, 2, 3 buttons. 3 buttons. Alright. First button's called Investigating. The second button, button 2, is called Creatures. Alright, button 3 is called Treasure, just like that. Alright, let's go and program these buttons. In a minute. First I'm going to do the picture box. It's like the last thing, like I always forget. Alright, and I believe, yep, I have picture 30. Alright, great. Alright, red lines go away. Let's save this here, save our work real quick. Alright, button 1. Alright. Description, text. Alright, that's button 1. Moving on to button 2. Alright, and button 3, last but not least. Alrighty. That's button 3. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and verify that we programmed all of this correctly. I don't think I did. And the reason I don't think I did is because I accidentally put in the wrong I basically copied the text from button 3 and put it in button 4, 2 and put it in button 3. That should be correct now. Okay. Let's check it out. Alright, button number 30. We have room 30 right here. Okay. Investigating. That's different, and that's different. All right. Well, congratulations, guys. We made it to the end of the stream. Thank you for those who tuned in and for those who are currently watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Anytime that we're streaming, you can get a notification if you click the little bell icon next to that subscribe button. And we try to come out with interesting content every now and then. But we don't stream as often as some streamers. But when we do, you'll definitely be notified of it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more coding videos like this, or interested in other types of coding questions, or maybe you even have suggestions for games or something you'd like to see played, leave a comment down in the description, and we'll see if we can get to that and make that a reality. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.